for now, I would like to step away and hand over to our first group of speakers, presenters this afternoon. Sorry, not this afternoon, this evening. It's a real pleasure to invite Daniel Fountain to lead a conversation through the incredibly powerful work of Heather Schulte with Dana Moses and Anne Spooner from the States, and Daniela Lara Espinoza here in the UK, although talking about her work in South America. Can I invite Daniel first to say hello so we can spotlight you, Daniel?
Hello, can you hear me?
Can hear you, there you are. We can see you too, fantastic. Wonderful to see you, thanks Daniel. And Heather.
Hello.
There's Heather. We've got
and
Heather.
your good afternoon is completely applicable here.
Is it afternoon for you too?
Yes, it's little afternoon. Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Great. Good to see you, Heather. And Dana Moses.
Hello. Hi.
There is Dana. Hi, Dana. Good to see you with us too.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to unspotlight myself and step back and hand over to you, Daniel.
Great, thanks Emma, and thanks to you and Amy for putting in all of this work. Doing an online event is not easy, so hats off to you both for coordinating these 3 brilliant days. Yeah, I'm delighted to kind of chair this session with Heather and Daniela, with Dana and Laurel obviously here as well. Just to say that we've had some really great responses onto the Padlet, and I'm aware of time already, so 10 minutes is not going to be sufficient to do both of these really powerful, urgent projects enough justice. So I would really welcome people to continue carrying on that conversation on the Padlet page. We had people responding to your film, Daniela, saying, somebody said that they loved the juxtaposition of the incredibly beautiful embroidery beadwork against the stark and alarming subject matter. And Heather, somebody commented about your video to say that it was a really visually impactful project, and that there was a sense of connection and community belonging through the workshops, even working remotely. I wondered if you both just wanted to talk a little bit about the labour involved in the production of the project. So Heather, each stitch for you in the project represents a kind of human life, and Daniela, your project, you're kind of giving voice to women's stories that have suffered violence in Chile. And I'm just wondering about the nature of textiles as a process to allow us to slow down, the contemplative, and a space in which to have these conversations. So I'm just going to open that up generally to you both, how you feel that the method of production itself is key.
You want to start?
Sure. Yes, I think in pandemic times, especially when we were all at home and everything kind of went on pause, I think there's a big surge that's happened in handcrafts that's been noticed in popular culture. How many people are turning? There's people doing news articles on how many people are stitching or knitting or taking up a hobby that they've left behind because of work or school or what have you. And so it was really interesting to me that this project correlated with this just phenomenon, which wasn't really intentional, other than the fact that I already worked in stitching and I already appreciated and had turned to craft and to stitch work for my own sense of calm and repair, if you will. I've been in hospital settings too many times in my life, and either knitting or stitching of some form usually was part of passing time while I was there, and also creating meaning. So that's been really exemplified and magnified, I would say, during this time and through this project.
Great, thanks, Heather. And how about you, Daniela?
Well, for me, as I explained a little bit in the video, my project was not going to be a video at all. I had to change everything because of the pandemic. I was going to show my work in group presentations where people were going to be able to touch the works and start a conversation about the crafts and, of course, embroidery and the materials used and what crafts mean to them and maybe what embroidery means to them. And then talk about a sensitive subject, which is violence against women, and how they have experienced that themselves in our patriarchal society. But because of the pandemic, I had to create a video and show my work through a video and have access to an audience in that way, and then have a survey. And through that survey, I collected feedback from the participants, and then I asked them to be collaborators of my work if they wanted to, by giving me suggesting words and sentences or phrases to be embroidered into one of my unfinished aprons, and that's how I connected with my audience, by making them collaborators of my research. And yeah, I agree with Heather. I've always found that embroidery or stitching and knitting has been good for my mind, and I think that the people who see the work can also connect with that, thinking about the time that we invest in doing what we do, and yeah, reflect on the subjects that we are presenting to them through our work. So yeah.
Great, thank you both. And Daniela, I know yours had to change quite drastically because of COVID and shifted online. But maybe for both of you, I don't know if you want to just briefly talk about the ways in which you see the project developing. Obviously, these are really ongoing issues, really urgent, and are still happening around us today. It's not something that's just in the past. But how do you see the kind of projects developing, as things start to eventually open back up again, and we can get back to doing what most of us in this group love, which is participatory textiles in person, being able to touch and feel the objects and materials with the textiles? How do you kind of see the project developing?
Ours, I started just stitching on my own, and then I realized that I couldn't continue stitching on my own because I was literally stitching the data. This is the beginning, right? So this is January of 2020 into March. And then by March 16th, I couldn't stitch all those numbers every single day. And then it just got bigger from there. And I started stitching with my neighbors outside because this panel is 10 feet long. So we could still do distancing practice while in our separate yards or whatever during the summer. And then we had the second surge in the middle of June, starting in the middle of June, end of June, and I had a friend who asked if they could help somehow, and we started making kits for each day. So I'll just show you. I have a few of them here. So it went from being in person. This one's one I got recently. It's from September 13th numbers. And so these are all over the US. Dana's stitching on one. I saw yours sitting there, and Laurel's stitching one. And so what went from me stitching locally with people in my area expanded into trying to forge connections. I mean, I know Dana from high school and her mother-in-law stitched a block, which I have here too. So it's been really interesting to see how some of my own personal connections have been involved in this. And then it's just branched out into people I don't know, people I've now know and have connections with through this work. And then now that they say things are getting better, we hope, as people are getting vaccinated, and hopefully we're starting to see the end of at least the crisis points, we can start stitching together again. And so I hope to travel with the bigger panels, because this is the first of 3. And so there's lots of stitches here that need to be filled in. And so these will be in-person stitching sessions with groups of people. And that they can range from short term. So like I come for a couple hours, people sit and stitch, we have a conversation. The stitching is more meditative. If people want to make a little design, they can, but the time limitations mean you can't make something elaborate, like a big piece that takes months like this. And so those will be more geared towards community collaboration, healing, reconnecting, or connecting with new people, and could also be an opportunity to bring people who have lost loved ones with the doctors who cared for them, people who were sick in the hospital to meet the staff who cared for them, who they might not have been conscious of because they were on a respirator, or who knows, potentially with administrators or government officials as well. So there's a lot of opportunity for different layers of repair, and not just within the medical industry, but within all sorts. I mean, the pandemic has comprehensively affected all of us in very different ways. So I'm adapting this to different groups, and hopefully going to be able to be in a lot of different, working with a lot of different organizations to talk about how the pandemic has affected each group and the individuals within those groups in different ways, and be able to have conversations about that so that we can hopefully come out of this and start making things better than they were when we went into it. So.
Great, thanks, Heather. And Daniela, how do you see the project developing? Do you envisage like in-person workshops? Or?
Yeah, I think so. So I would like to go back to the initial idea of having the group presentations. And so my project was a little bit different because I was getting feedback from the audience. I was making them collaborators of my research, but they were not necessarily making something. They were helping me with a project that I had already started. And they were not necessarily people who were into crafts or into making something with their hands. So I would like to experiment maybe a little bit with that. Also, like people also doing embroidery or something that I mean, creating with their hands and not just being like a part of, like not just being collaborators in the creative aspect of the work. So hopefully after we can meet, I don't know, but we will be able to do that. But yeah, but also having the chance to do all these things online, I think has created opportunities for us to meet people from different parts of the world. So it's, I think, things that we hadn't maybe thought about. And in my country, we have a it's like a very big country, and I had the opportunity to be in contact with people that I might not have had the opportunity to meet geographically. So I think it has brought us together in a way that maybe in group presentations I wouldn't have had that chance. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And it's in some ways you've been able to widen the discourse on these issues and give like a broader awareness of them. So thank you both so much. I'm really cautious of time. It runs away from us really quickly. I wondered if Dana and Laurel, I can see you stitching away here. I wondered if you wanted to give any reflections on the Stitching the Situation project as kind of project members, as people working on panels for the project, of how you found the project.
Yeah, I found the project because Heather is a friend of mine. As she mentioned, we knew each other in high school, so many years ago. And COVID was just something where it kind of took over our whole lives a year and a half ago when it first started. I have several children, and so they were home from school, and we, rearranged all of our activities. And it was just a way to, I enjoy cross stitching too. It was a way to help my friend. And it was also a way to document this time that's so, it's going to be a turning point in a lot of different ways. There's going to be a lot of things that we think about, pre-COVID, post-COVID, how did life change? Or how did our family change, or how did the way we spend our time change, or etc. And so it was just a way to document this time, and I've really enjoyed working on the project. I knew that I liked doing cross stitch. I've always knitted and done different textile crafts, but I haven't spent this much time doing it in a lot of years, and so it's been a great way to get back into it.
Great, thank you both. I think we'll wrap up there because I don't want to delay the rest of the day, but just to say thank you to Heather and Daniela for these fantastic projects, and Laurel and Dana for joining us. The videos, if you haven't watched them, or if you want to watch them back in light of the discussion, I believe that they'll be on the website indefinitely. So please do go and watch them. They're two really fantastic and urgent projects. So do check them out and continue the conversations on Padlet, and kind of begin to have conversations and wider discussion on there would be great. So thank you all for joining us, and Emma, back over to you, I think.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for plugging the Padlet as well so brilliantly. So I won't, but I will move on to our next presenter this evening. So we're delighted to have Alicia Decker with us this evening, who is going to talk about the work that she's been doing. Her work sets participants a fundamental challenge. Again, Alicia is based in the States, and she is questioning what it means to be American and asking contributors to express this through textile making. So Alicia joins us in conversation with some of the people she's been working with. Ellen Knutson, I believe. So Alicia, would you like to say hello so we can spotlight you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Emma.
Well, thank you for being here, Alicia. It's great to see you. And we have Ellen Knutson as well.
Yeah, Ellen, you pronounced the K, so it's Knutson.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Knutson.
No worries at all.
Thank you. Thank you for correcting me. So nice to see you, Ellen. Thank you for coming.
Great to be here.
Susan Norris as well.
Hello.
Hi, Susan. Would you
Yeah,
like
I was a participant in this what does it mean to be an American project? So I'll be saying a few words about what I did later.
Wonderful. And Kaitlyn Krall as well.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you as well. Fantastic. Well, I will step back, Alicia, and hand over to you. Wonderful to have you here with us.
Great, thank you. I'm going to do a screen share, and we prepared a presentation for you all to just overview the project and share participant feedback as well. So let's see if I can do this quickly. Good enough there. And then there. Hope everyone can see that.
Yeah, it looks great, Alicia.
Thanks.
And thank you, Emma. Alicia and I and Susan and Kaitlyn are very thrilled to be here today to discuss our project. What does it mean to be American? And this project, it actually started as a conversation project, which then developed into quilts and participatory stitching. Alicia and I are going to give a quick background on the project to start, but we're really going to focus on the voices of the participants, including Susan and Kaitlyn. But just as a quick background, from fall 2017 to summer 2020, I facilitated 8 conversations across the state of Oregon around the question, what does it mean to be American? And I heard from people living in a wide swath of Oregon, both urban and rural. And the thing that really struck me was how people were struggling with the ideals of America and what they perceived as the reality of the country. And Alicia had come as a participant to one, and when she said she was a textile artist who was interested in doing a community-based art project on this topic, I knew I was all in. And at each conversation, I had captured the words that were being said by the conversation participants. And this really is what formed the basis for what we wanted to represent in the quilts.
Yeah, so attending Ellen's conversation was super inspiring right off the bat. And I immediately saw how textiles could both document the conversations that had happened and then help facilitate future ones. And then also personally, because the US has been so deeply divided these last few years through the Trump presidency and all the social and racial justice conflicts and the pandemic, just on top of everything, this project was really started for me personally as a way to cope with everything that was going on in our country. And Ellen and I both saw this as an opportunity to bring people together during a time of division and provide an outlet for people to express themselves during this difficult time in a tactile and meaningful way through stitching. It also became a gentle means to have difficult conversations about what we want for our country, to make space for diverse perspectives, and hopefully to find some common ground in the end. So as part of the project, Ellen and I put on our researcher hats and began compiling all the responses across the conversations. And among hundreds of them, we found the top 5 most said responses, which are pictured here in order: opportunity, freedom, diversity, arrogance, and hope. I created these quilted tapestries as just another way to visually represent the conversation project, and also as an attempt to document the common ground that existed, that actually did exist during all this divisiveness going on in the country.
Another way that we chose to represent all of this information was by Alicia compiling all of the responses into this printed textile pattern. And this pattern is actually color coded by the locations where the words were spoken in Oregon. And this printed fabric became the unifying fabric for our community quilt. So we had incorporated that fabric into these crazy quilt squares with the goal of building a what does it mean to be American community quilt. Because we had to shift, because we couldn't do things in person and we shifted because of the pandemic, we sent these quilt squares through the mail out to friends, family, and strangers who have now become friends all across the country. And even though we were in the midst of a global pandemic, we still wanted to keep this project going. And we thought that during this time, people might really appreciate that opportunity for self-expression and to feel a sense of a community and contributing to a whole. So we mailed out 56 squares and any embroidery supplies people might need. And we asked people to simply respond to the question, what does it mean to be American, in any way that they would like. However, we would provide prompts and guidance if they asked.
So opening the envelopes, receiving each embroidered response was just really exciting when I expressed that to you all, seeing what everybody stitched. Some of them came with little notes and even full multi-page letters explaining what was behind their pieces, which was amazing to experience and to receive. So we wanted to share a few of those with you. So this first one is from Orkada, who lives in Portland, Oregon. And I didn't know her at all before, but she heard of this project from a friend and was immediately super excited to participate. And because she was local, I ended up actually picking up her finished piece in person, socially distanced. And we ended up talking for a couple of hours, which was amazing. And she told me what was all behind her quilt square. And she told me that FMLN, which is embroidered on the front, stands for the military group in El Salvador that she was forced to either join or be killed during the Civil War that was going on there in the 90s. And instead, though, she chose to flee her home, and she experienced a tumultuous journey coming to the US. And she explained how her choice to flee was really a decision of life over death, which is amazing to me. And she talked about also her conflicted relationship with the US due to the fact that America actually helped fund the conflict that was going on in El Salvador, while she still felt grateful for the opportunity to leave and come here. So she expressed that this project was a really meaningful opportunity for her to kind of sit with those complex feelings and be able to outwardly express them.
And Aaliyah, who lives in Sandy, Oregon, she chose simply to stitch accountable for everything we've done in this country and to the world, and everything that we have the ability to change and to make better. It's up to us, she explained. And when she sent in her square, she also said how much she appreciated the opportunity to sit with these questions and to think and to stitch and to use this as a conversation starter with her family.
Aubrey from Austin, Texas. Her family's been in the Rio Grande Valley long before it became Texas. And as she put it, America came to us. We didn't come to America. So drawing on her experiences growing up in a competitive and successful family, Aubrey's square displays the concept of the American dream and all that comes with it. Some of her words are competitive, promotion, Ivy League, rat race. There's many more here, but that's what it's all about.
And Arun from San Francisco noted that he had cross-stitched a bit as a kid, but it had been decades since he'd done any embroidery work. And this project really encouraged him to re-engage with this type of self-expression. He reflected that being American is, well, complicated, and that we are united through division. The origins of the United States, he says, are painful and ugly, but the diversity of the people who make up this country, sort of like a patchwork quilt, is also its strength and a thing of beauty.
And Siobhan is a Portland-based artist and activist, and she immigrated to the US from Ireland when she was really young. She also participated in the project and created this beautiful square. She also explained that she believes being American means fighting for equity and justice on behalf of marginalized communities, and fighting for those that are most vulnerable, which is obviously what her square is all about.
And then Bonnie, who's a rancher in Wyoming, said that she had asked about 20 family and friends about what it means to be American before she started stitching. And she said that by far she found the most common response was freedom. But she also told us that beyond the words, the stitches themselves brought meaning to this square. According to Bonnie, to the left of AIM, which stands for the American Indian Movement, are blue tear-shaped stitches. And those tears are for the many injustices done to so many people. She also embroidered the 5 colors for different races in the middle between responsibilities and interdependence, up to the fence or blanket stitch, and flaring out once those colors have reached over the fence to lead to a line towards freedom. She ended by saying, I originally began this as simple words and stitches, but it evolved into so much more as I worked on it. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this project. And with that, we're really happy to have a few participants who can use their own voices to tell us about their experiences. So I'd like to invite Susan.
Okay. Am I on? Am I?
You are on, Susan.
Okay. So I'm Susan Norris from Ames, Iowa. I am a retired elementary school art teacher, so I love collaboration. I came to this project through Catherine Reinhardt, who's been part of your study day today in her collective mending sessions. And I was really excited when I learned about this project and the question, what does it mean to be American? This was in the fall of 2019, I think. And as Alicia mentioned, there's a lot of division in the United States and the racial unrest and the pandemic. And I really talked about it with a lot of people, my 4 sons and friends and family. What word should I choose? And I picked the word confused. And I tried to make the word look like it was confused in the way that I stitched it. And around the word, I stitched some questions. In whom do we Americans place our trust? What are we becoming? When will we replace arrogance with empathy? And how can we transform all this division into unity? What will it mean to be American in the future? it's incredible to me how many different responses people have to this question. And it's also magical that this project created a safe space to express different ideas. And we all exist together in the wholeness of the quilt. So I was really honored to be part of this project. And it really gave me pause to calm down and slow down and really think about what it means to be an American to me.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was awesome. Thanks for sharing. And then in addition to mailing quilt squares, we've also held several stitch sessions and conversations in person and over Zoom. And one person who contributed to the community quilt also teaches at University of California in Davis, California. And she invited us to bring the project to her class, her fibers class, where 24 students stitch what being America means to them based on their unique perspectives and experiences. So Susan actually provided the vintage handkerchiefs that all the students embroidered on, which is just super nice to have that collaboration. And Kaitlyn, who's with us here, was actually is currently actually a student in that class. So I'd like to invite Kaitlyn. We'd love to hear from you and tell us about your work, and it's pictured here, and your experiences with the project.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Hi everyone. Thank you for having me. As Alicia mentioned, my name is Kaitlyn, and I'm currently a design student at the University of California, Davis, and I participated in this project through one of my classes. Similar to how this project began, my individual project began with a conversation about what does it mean to be American, and I noticed in my class there was a general tone of hopelessness and division, especially after experiencing this past year and everything that has happened. But when I approached this project, I really wanted to focus on what I appreciate about being American and living here. And the first thing that came to mind is the beautiful landscapes that we have here, and how despite this feeling of division, we are all still connected through the land and the roads that pass through it. So I really tried to depict that in my project. And then within the road, I also wrote lost and confused, because when asking myself, what does it mean to be American? I think that question is a little confusing, similar to what Susan was saying, especially personally. I come from a family of mixed races and from different parts of the country and different parts of the world. So finding that specific identity can be a little bit confusing. And I think that trying to find yourself by taking a path through life is like important to me. So that's what I did with embroidery on this handkerchief, and I had a lot of fun doing it. It was my first time doing like a full embroidery project, so I got to experiment with different types of stitches and different strategies and techniques. So yeah, I really enjoyed participating in this project.
Thanks so much, Kaitlyn, for sharing. And for a beginning embroiderer, you made some great work. I have to say. And then lastly, I'd love to share how we've exhibited the project so far. We've exhibited at 3 different locations around Portland, and how through the exhibits, we wanted to continue the participatory nature of the project by having visitors contribute directly to it. So in each exhibit, we've interspersed posters between the community quilt squares, where visitors not only interact up close with the embroidered responses, but they also have the opportunity to think about the question and add their own responses on the posters.
It's been so very rewarding to see how this project developed from a community conversation into those ideas being expressed in textile form, to including others into participatory stitching, and then seeing how these textiles continue to spur conversation and thinking.
Yeah, so that's all we have. We'd love to keep in touch if anyone will invite questions, but if anyone wants to keep in touch, our email addresses are here. I've also included my Instagram handle in case I have posted some images of finished quilt squares from the community quilt, if you'd like to see those. Yeah, and with that, thank you. We appreciate your attention and being here, and we're happy to keep the conversation going. I think we have a couple minutes left for some questions, if anyone has any, and we'll also be answering questions from the Padlet. I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Hi, it's Jo McIntosh here. I don't have a question, but I just love the fact that you must have had some difficult conversations which can be diffused through textiles and stitching. So it gives people a chance to say things that might, if they were to speak them, be very angry, but by translating it into stitch, just kind of calms things down a bit, allows people to say it, but not be aggressive. And it's really shows how powerful textiles can be. And if I was in America, I'd have joined you, but Cornwall's a bit far.
I would have actually paid myself personally for the shipping to ship you a square, quite honestly, because I would love for you to participate. And I totally agree with all the sentiment that you just said. So thank you.
If you're carrying on, I'll let you have my address. You can ship me one, and I'll pay for shipping.
It's a deal.
Yeah, sounds great.
So thank you so much, Alicia and Ellen and Susan and Kaitlyn. It's an amazing project, and you spoke about it so well. I think everyone's really blown away, and yeah, it's really great, particularly to hear from Susan and Kaitlyn, that kind of, the participant's voice, the direct from the fabric and the needle perspective, of getting involved. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Lovely. Okay, so Emma and Alex will gradually unspotlight you, and I'm going to bring in Jo. I'm going to try to.
I'm here.
Oh, you are here. Yes.
I've translated into Alicia. I think I like that version.
You said what now?
Oh, there I am. Hello.
You are here.
I am, yes.
So thank you, Jo. So moving on into another exciting part of this session, one that we've all been anticipating, which is the sharing of the buildings that you have been stitching in response to Jo's invitation. So I wondered, this, I have to say, that of the whole day, this is the bit that is the most open in format, because it depends on what people have to share and how they, whether they feel they would like to be spotlighted to share it. So I'm going to suggest that anybody who has a stitched building, whether finished or in progress, who would like to show us their work and tell us a bit about their building, if you could raise your hand using the raise hand function, which is available to you in the bar at the bottom. And while I just give you a minute to think about doing that, I wonder, Jo, if you could just give us a quick sort of reminder of how you started doing this stitch. How did you get into stitching buildings, Jo?
I think it was a moment of insanity, actually. I'd seen something similar at a knitting and stitching show here in Exeter, which was based around buildings in a place in Wales, the name of which completely is gone. But we'll come back.
Owl? It was
That's the one, yes. Well done, thank you, Amy. When I looked at it, I thought, we could do that here in St Ives. But for ages, I didn't tell anybody because I thought it was completely bonkers. Nobody will be interested. And then I mentioned it to somebody and they went, oh, yes, please. And here's £50 towards it. And I was like, really? I mean, I have to do something now. So we kind of had a sort of a get together at our local Salvation Army Hall, and I outlined what my idea was, which of course it never ends up as that, but there you go. And I said, right, okay, we have a lot of buildings along the Wharf Road. For those of you who don't know St Ives in Cornwall, Google it and then come and visit. Around the harbour, there are lots of buildings, and I thought, well, let's just do this. So I said, right, okay, this is my idea. You all go out and choose the building you want to represent. Take a photograph. Here's a piece of calico that was about 11 inches square. Now, whatever that is in metric, you'll have to sort that out for yourselves. I'm old school. So I said, right, within that 11-inch square, make a frame so we've got a bit extra. But you can represent that building whatever way, whatever textile medium you choose. It can be stitched, appliqued, bag rugged. I don't personally care. And it was amazing. I think if you've seen the film, which is on Padlock, we ended up with 2 25-foot banners of those buildings. And at which point I thought, oh, great, that's fine, that's done now. And then they went, so can we do 4th Street now? I was like, oh, yes, when I've had a rest. So we were midway through 4th Street when the pandemic hit. So it's kind of it's having a pause at the moment. But I've just had an email telling me that we have an opportunity to do a workshop based on St Ives in Stitches to show the G7 who are coming here in June, believe it or not. As part of showing them how creative Cornwall is. So now I'm going to be summoning the troops again. What was my reason for doing this was basically being aware that St Ives, like a lot of places, had a bit of fractured community. So you have the arty side, and the people who live up Bendigo and don't do any arty at all.
We should say for our visitors from around the world that St Ives is, I mean, one of the most beautiful towns in the UK on the coast of Cornwall, and has long been an artist's haven, hasn't it? So it's a very, very beautiful place, but a mixed community. Yeah, a
mixed community. And so I decided that I want to bring people together, but okay, we could have just had coffee mornings, lovely. But the stitching is what gives people a focus. And also it enables people to have conversations that they wouldn't if they were looking at each other. As you all know this, if people are not making eye contact and they're stitching and they're knitting, sometimes the stories that come out are really quite incredible. And we had 2 lovely sisters who were born and brought up here, who could quite frankly have done every building themselves because their knowledge was superb. And I was just blown away by the response. I feel a bit sort of humble because listening to some of yours, because mine doesn't really have a political background, but it has a real bringing the community together. That was my background, and I had never done anything like this before at all.
It's amazing, Jo. Okay, we've got some hands up. So what I'm going to propose to do, I can see we've got maybe 7 or 8 hands up. So if the people with hands raised are okay with this, I'm going to spotlight 4 of you at a time.
Ooh,
and I've got a limited amount of time. So you've got, like, without this seeming like under pressure, if you could take a minute or so each, I'll ask you in turn to show us your building and tell us about it. So I'm going to spotlight Alison and Pina and Elizabeth and Charlotte. I'm in control.
All these people.
Hello. So I'm so excited for these buildings. So Alison, would you like to go first?
I have chosen to do, I'm in Bristol, I've chosen to do the Bristol Harbour side, which if I lean back, you might be able to see in my background there.
You can see it beautifully, yeah.
is, as I realise, is very complicated, but I've managed to use lots of little scraps and lots of odd ends of embroidery thread and machine thread. So as usual with my projects, I've made it way more complicated than I needed to.
I'm always a big fan of using scraps and making the most of what we have. So so Alison, when you've completed it and it's up on a wall somewhere, I'd love to see a picture.
I'll pop a picture on the Padlet.
Lovely.
Awesome. Okay, Pina, how about you?
So I chose my childhood home. I don't know.
Oh, lovely.
So there's a lot of cultural aspects to this work. Obviously, being British Sicilian, it incorporates many kind of cultural plants mixed with the milk bottles outside, and even just the fabrics that come from traditional Sicilian dress. And there's my first little black cat down there. And the reason he's in there is because part of the culture is to practice healing arts, otherwise possibly known as witchcraft. So yeah, there's a lot in that.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Tina.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
It's lovely to see how something that is on one level as simple as a building can have so much invested in it. So that was lovely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jo.
You're welcome.
Okay. Elizabeth, over to you.
Hello. So this is my image here, and I apologise because I misread the instructions. It's not a local building, but it is in fact a representation of Schindler's House in California.
Oh, yeah.
So the other week I was listening to Edmund Devald giving a talk. He's a ceramicist, and he was giving a talk as part of the Crafts Council Collect Fair. And he's done some work here. And it was a concrete house built in the 1920s. And I was really struck by the images. So one half is sort of looking outside in with the sort of the glass and the lit there, and the other one is from the inside of the building with the light coming in through these structures. So that's my sort of representation of that building.
Thank you. And assuming that is Schindler of Schindler's List.
No, it's not. It's a different Schindler.
So,
Schindler.
So why that Schindler?
Because he was an emigre from Vienna who moved to California and designed and built this house with his wife, and it did set up as part of a sort of an art salon with lots of visiting people of the time. But he may have been related, but I don't know that part of the background. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. That's lovely.
Okay, and just before we go to Charlotte, Emma, can I set you the challenge of being ready to spotlight the other 4 people who have raised their hands and unspotlight these ones after Charlotte has spoken? Let's see if we can manage that. So Charlotte, what have you made?
Hi, I've just changed my background to show that. I don't know if you can also see that as well. Mine's very half finished. It's
a work in progress.
My background, hang on. There we go. So I live in Nottingham, and I work at Nottingham Contemporary. I'm an associate artist there, and I've tried to recreate the building from memory. So I haven't looked at a photo of it, which has been really hard to do. Not to look. And I go to the building a lot. I was there yesterday, and yet I'm quite surprised at how tricky I've found it to draw it and recreate it. Without having a visual cue or kind of an image as a reference. And the building was built 10 years ago as a contemporary art gallery, so it's a very unique building in the city centre. And because of Nottingham's history with lace, the outside of the building has a lace print to it in the concrete, and there's a lot of gold as well, but I'm using my scraps, so I'm using gold thread but yellow fabric. But what I have found some lace, so what I'm going to do is print, as my background shows, use, do this technique, which I've actually been doing a lot at the Contemporary as an artist working with community groups, where using lace to print with and to mark make with. So I'm going to put that over the top to jazz it up a bit.
Charlotte, I love the fact that you're kind of working from memory, which actually is going to make your representation even more yours than if you were working from a photograph. So don't worry that you haven't worked from a photograph. Just do it. It'll be brilliant.
Yeah, it's an interesting process, but it's frustrating. It's like myself this challenge.
Thank you so much to you for. Right, we're going to move swiftly on because we're eating into our breakout time, but this is so good and so important to see everybody's buildings. I'm slightly breaking my own rules. So hopefully Emma will be clicking through Zoom controls. Here come the next people. It's exciting.
Technology is fun. Hello, Charlotte again.
Okay, so we have, I think, 4 more people appearing.
Oh, there's Laura.
Here's Laura, whose building we've seen various sneak peeks of on Twitter, looking very beautiful, and on the Padlet as well. And Kirsten, and another Laura, and I think there might be 1 or 2 more people.
Oh, Ellen. Oh, excellent.
Okay, let's go for it. Right, I'm going to be really strict. I'm going like 30 seconds each. Okay, so Laura Burrell, let's go with you first.
Oh, that's the Hardwick Hall.
You're on mute.
You're on mute. You're on mute, Laura.
Hardwick Hall.
That's better.
Which is my favourite building locally. But when I picked it, I forgot it was Hardwick Hall, more glass than wall. I decided to bead the windows, which was the most stupid thing ever, because I've been beading endlessly the last few days. But I've loved it. It's been such a gorgeous process. So thank you, Jo, so much.
You're welcome. And I love one of the... Sorry, I'm sorry, Amy, I'll shut up in a minute.
10 seconds for you, Jo.
One of the buildings we had on the front was Pizza Express, which used to be Woolworths, which was a big grey concrete building, deeply boring. And the person who did it all in lovely floral fabric. Looked absolutely gorgeous. Right, that's me done. Sorry, Amy.
Thank you, Jo.
It's inspired by the tapestries within the building for my fabric choice,
Gorgeous. Okay, Kirsten, please show us what you've been making.
Yes, I've been making, this is the start, this is a paper collage, which Excellent. Which I have printed onto fabric for the printer to stitch it of my local library here in Shenfield in Essex, which has been threatened with by the county council by sort of downgrading. So I'm part of a Save Shenfield Library group. And I thought, well, and there's a beautiful cherry tree outside, which has been in bloom up until a few days ago. And that's again, as part of the project, they're pulling the building down, building a new library, suppose it, hopefully, with flats above. And the cherry tree is going to go as part of the project, which again has upset a lot of people. So it's... So I thought, well, I'll have to get a picture of that, an image of that. So I'm busy stitching. I was busy doing the collage yesterday, working all hours, as we tend to do. And anyway, I'm stitching now with some chain stitch and so on, getting all my whites together to this white flowering cherry tree. So that's Lovely. It. And there's people in front, and there's a little, and the windows is printed from the Gruffalo book.
Oh, yes.
I've got a little mouse underneath the tree.
Excellent.
Supporting us.
That's looking gorgeous. Thank you, Kirsten. Yeah, libraries are so important. So we have to fight for our libraries. Sorry, Amy.
Okay, Laura Donald, please tell us what you've been making.
Hello. I have made
yes,
the University Cafe, which is a bit of a Glasgow institution. So there's lots of lovely old cafes in Glasgow. And I actually got married in one of them, which is
excellent.
Not this one, but the one I got married in doesn't have such an exciting outside. So I thought I would do this one. So it's nearly finished, but they always have lots of things in the window display, like paper mache ice creams and stuff. So I feel like I need to add something to the windows to make it look a bit more like it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I do quite a bit of embroidery, but I haven't sort of put textiles together like this for a really long time. So it's been nice to do that.
Beautiful. And Ellen.
Great. So I decided actually to do a skyscraper in Denver, which I liked the idea of thinking about the skyscraper as this like hard glass, shiny modern thing and representing it in soft textiles. And this is one of the iconic buildings in the Denver skyline. I'm sure it has an official name, but colloquially it's known as the cash register building because of its shape. So it's I probably have more to do with it, but this is where it's at now. And I'll also just note that the fabric of the applique is a bit of a scrap from some of the fabrics that we used in our community quilts. So
I have to say thank you. It's great to see that my completely bonkers idea has actually resonated with people that are not in Cornwall, and in fact the other side of the pond. And again, it's the way that textiles can bridge, language, barriers, anything. Just a simple act of stitching and fabric brings people together, whatever their backgrounds are, and it's great. So yeah, you're brilliant. So please put them up on the Padlet, because I've learned how to do it, so it puts my name on it. Technology. I've loved seeing them and commenting on them, because some of the buildings that we did here are now not being used for the same use they were when we started the project. So it's also becoming a historical map of, as Tony called the film, A Stitch in Time, because the use of the buildings is changing. So yeah, so great, well done. So keep going and do more.
Wonderful. So thank you so much to all of you for sharing, for getting involved and sharing your buildings. Thank you to Jo for so enthusiastically setting the challenge for us to get involved with.